wake me up to another good morning. Time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all.
Welcome back to the 3x5 Live
podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about mindset, mindfulness,
Wellness,
productivity,
well-being.
And last week we talked about money.
Money.
Stop. And this kind of, the topic this week kind of, I don't know, it's kind of in alignment with
Yeah, a little bit, for sure.
A little bit. It's this whole mindset. Jessie and I, which depends what chapter you are in your life right now. It's not that we've been hit hard by both turning 40 this year, but I think it's made us.
You just told them our age.
I think it's made us more reflective on our stage of life and where we're going, what we're trying to accomplish, what success means to us, where we are in our careers. All those things I think have been top of mind, which I honestly didn't really think going into my 40th birthday that I thought it was just gonna be another birthday, and it hit me harder, not from like, oh my gosh, I'm 40, but just reflective. Harder than I thought.
I think just like analyzing and kind of putting a pin on, well, where are we right now? And is this where, are we continuing the way that we want to continue? So it was a nice like reset, kind of look at our life and just have some conversations surrounding it. So
yeah. And there's this whole idea of attainment and then moving to attunement. And this was, I heard about this. There's a guy named Chip who was recruited by the founders of Airbnb many years ago. And as they were starting Airbnb, they wanted this kind of like wisdom mentor to come in. I think Chip at the time was in his early 50s. He had started a boutique hotel and he had, I think, 50 locations, and he sold those 50 locations. And they wanted him to come in and be almost like this,
I love that you said wisdom mentor.
Wisdom mentor,
like that.
yeah. Just to like guide these guys. I think they were in their late 20s at the time, the founders of Airbnb. But he talks often about this attainment stage of your life, which is basically from when you're born up to your kind of early mid 40s, and then moving into attunement. And
attainment meaning like that's the period of time where you're trying to attain new things, like knowledge, and you graduate and you get your degree, and then you are looking for a relationship, and then maybe it's marriage, and then it's children, and then it's a career shift, and then it's the house, and then it's the cars, and so you're in this period of time where you are attaining so much. And that idea that moving then to attunement, which would be that next chapter where now that you've attained all these things, how are you harmonizing with those things that you've now attained? And I feel like we have had some conversations about that. And that's what Bryan was saying. Like this matched so perfectly into this kind of chapter of our life because we're trying to connect this to, we've just planted all of these seeds in our garden. We have all of these projects that are growing. Mm-hmm. We both have a tendency and a personality where we just keep moving on to the next thing, because it's exciting and it drives us and we feel really good about it. But I think recently we've both been feeling, I wouldn't say overwhelmed, but kind of like, well, what is the point of all of this? Like, when are we going to actually be able to like sit in it and bask in it and grow it to a point where it's more fruitful and helps us to flourish? Yeah.
And I think we're also moving into the stage of wanting to, I don't know, be more reflective, more present, more just sink into life, instead of just grow. And
I wonder if this is like a season, I'm going to go to like my Ayurveda stuff, but I wonder if this is like a seasonal shift for us too, because I mean, being a teacher, a lot of times in the summer, like right before this time of year, right before the school year ends, I automatically would hit like a reflective stage where I would feel like I needed to slow down. I needed to look at all of these projects that I just started and the busyness of, a year or whatever. But it could be a stage, it could be a year, it could be whatever it is in that cyclic, way that our projects kind of go, right? Like we're busy. And before moving on to the next project, like what if we switch to that attunement or that watering of the garden or watering of the seeds so that you can actually bask in what you just created? Because so often we don't do that.
Yeah. And I think I'm just been having this craving to just really dive deeper into relationships and meaningful conversation than I have before. I mean, I think I've do a pretty good job of keeping up with relationships, but there's just this yearning for it. And I think something that hit home to me, which I said to you the other day, Jesse, was like the loneliest person is a 65-year-old retired male, because they've just sunk their entire life into their job, their career, what have you. And women tend to be better at continuing to foster relationships than men. And men kind of put that all on the back burner as they, reap their reward for their work. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's a season I'm in now of wanting to not be that 65-year-old, lonely man. But, and I'm not saying I will, but I mean, attunement really hit home to me. Mm-hmm. When I heard this.
Something also in that conversation that you talked about was the word, I think he was talking about like environment. It was like environmental mastery, I think is the word that they used in what you were talking about. And that spoke to me so much because it was that idea of as you get older, we get better at recognizing which environments and habitats we're putting ourselves in that help us to thrive and flourish, and what habitats and environments are toxic. And I think that we have a different type of voice, a different type of like, we don't give a crap anymore about like pleasing people and this idea of like having to fit in a specific spot and not wanting to ruffle any feathers. Like if we're in a toxic situation or you're in an environment that's not allowing you to flourish, I think in this attunement chapter, you get to change your environment and you do it knowing what's best for you. And that's that self-awareness, self-discovery, self-mastery piece. But I loved the idea of like the actual environment that you're in. Shift your environment, which is just
repot yourself.
Yeah, repot yourself. Yeah. Talking about seeds and plants and all that stuff. I just thought that was such a cool little tidbit too that they talked about.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, and I'm going to butcher this right now, but it's kind of like, in your 20s, you care what everybody thinks. In your 30s and 40s, there's this whole saying, but then in your 70s, you realize nobody even cared, I don't.
Yeah, that was not it, but that was close.
That everybody's basically thinking about themselves.
Yes, right. Well, it's the ego, right? Yeah, your ego shifts. Like you're very egocentric in your 20s and 30s because you are high achieving and you're trying to do all these things and set all these things in motion and in place. But I also want to say, if you're listening to this and you're not in your 40s and you haven't hit this like existential crisis that Bryan and I are currently in, this could happen anytime, right? Yeah. Like anytime you're working, I was just saying that before, but like anytime you're working on a project and you're attaining something and you're working really hard and it's busy and it's crazy, before moving on to that next project, maybe shift your mindset to think, okay, I just attained, how can I attune? Or I just planted these seeds, how can I water and nourish the soil so that I can actually watch it grow? Because that's where the beauty of life is that growth period. That's where you get to bask in the beauty of what you just created. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You don't have to wait till you're 40 or mid 40s before you hit attunement. It can be at any point that just requires pausing and reflecting.
But having awareness of that, if you are in your 20s or early 30s, and just say, all right, I'm in this attainment stage right now. I'm being aware of that. And eventually I'll move to the attunement. And just having that in the back of your mind, I think is helpful as well.
Like not the what's next. Like we just got married. What's next? Let's buy a house. We just got married. Or like we just bought a house. What's next? Let's have a kid. What's next? It's like, and that's, I mean, that's just how it is, right? It's easy for us to say that because we went through those periods of time. But I wish that I would have paused after those big moments in our life where we did attain that thing to really appreciate it.
Yes, exactly.
That's all we got for you this week.
Yeah. So attainment.
But this is something that I thought was super cool. And I hope that you chew on it like we have been. And this is an ongoing like thing for us. This year, we've really been trying to slow down. Sometimes we do better than other times. We've actually need to regroup a little bit and work on this a little harder.
So whenever I bring on the next project, it's going to be like attunement.
Yes. Pause and attune.
Yes. All right, guys. Until next week.
Take care.
We are all